At its core, sport is about storytelling. In that sense, it's unfair to judge the first weekend in August in the same way that you would one later on in April. There's been no time to marinate the juicy storylines that build and come to a head throughout the year. The best that we can do on the opening weekend is to serve up musings about transfers or dish out leftover narratives from the year prior, which have, for the most part, reached their climax. They may not be what you look back on and reminisce about 10 or 15 years later, but these early game weeks are the necessary prep work for the memorable moments of the season to come. Taking the raw ingredients of new players, managers and teams and turning it into the delectable final dish of West Brom staying up on the final day or Aguero stealing the title away in the dying seconds. With that said, it's hard not to feel a little bit of disappointment when the first week of the season doesn't quite live up to the level of excitement that you've had building up as a fan, counting down the weeks until you get to see your favourite side playing again. It's not just the aforementioned narrative effects either. There are material reasons why the actual football on show in week 1 might be just that little bit lower. Players struggling to shake off the rust, adjust to new tactics, and reacquaint themselves to the pace of competitive football, along with squads that are still heavily shifting thanks to unsettled players or managers who are unhappy with their options. In response to another opening week that, despite starting in a promising fashion, failed to live up to my levels of excitement, I thought that it might be fun to go back and look at the best game week 1 in Premier League history, with the added benefit of knowing the storylines that it helped to sow, along with a little bit of nostalgia in order to give opening weekends a fairer chance to shine. There's a fine balance to be struck between individual good games and the whole week being full of competitive football when it comes to finding the best option, but I think that the season that strikes the best balance is the opening week of the 2016-17 season, which had great goals, upsets, and a 7-goal thriller. Fresh off the fairy tale of their infamous Premier League winning season, Leicester opened up with the early Saturday kickoff away to newly promoted Hull City. The Tigers, having a threadbare squad heading into their first game of the season, at one point only having 13 fit senior players in the team, and that was reflected in the fact that they didn't make a single substitution in the entire game, although the bench did feature a young future star in Jarrod Bowen. The game started with a flurry of chances, with Jake Livermore blocking an open goal to prevent Leicester from taking the lead, before a remarkable goal on the stroke of half-time gave Hull the surprising lead instead. It was credited to Adama Diomande, but in reality it was a near simultaneous dual scissor kick goal between him and Abel Hernandez. Riyad Mahrez then levelled things up from the spot, before Robert Snodgrass stroked home a sumptuous half volley from the edge of the area to give Hull City a big win against the reigning Premier League champions. It was the sign of a more difficult season to come for Leicester as they finished 12th and parted ways with Ranieri despite his monumental achievement with the team. Mike Phelan would win his second game in charge with Hull as well, winning Manager of the Month for August, despite the turmoil that the club was in. But he'd be out the door by January to make way for Marco Silva, and Hull wouldn't escape the drop, even with their strong start. The slate of 3 o'clock kickoffs provided a set of close, but admittedly low-scoring games. Leroy Fair bundled home a late winner for Swansea against Sean Dyche's Burnley, while Solomon Rondon nodded home a late James McLean free kick for Tony Pulis and West Brom against Crystal Palace. All 4 teams would finish out the season surviving in fairly comfortable fashion, with West Brom in particular impressing, equalling their second highest ever placement in Premier League history as they finished in 10th place, with their distinct style of football. Everton versus the eventual runners-up Tottenham, Middlesbrough versus Stoke, and Southampton versus Watford all ended in nervy 1-1 draws. This was Middlesbrough's first year back in the Premier League since 08-09, and their only since, and their striker Alvaro Negredo is perhaps the least iconic on the list of goal scorers in these score draws, with the others Eric Lamela, Ross Barkley, Xherdan Shaqiri, Etienne Capoue, and Nathan Redmond, all bringing waves of nostalgia for Premier League stalwarts of a mostly bygone era. That feeling reached a peak for me when looking back at this weekend, when looking at the Everton team sheet, led from the front by Gerard Deulofeu and Kevin Mirallas, two top players who I hadn't thought about in years. The long-range free kick from the muscle hamster was probably the pick of the bunch among the 3 o'clock kickoffs. The late game on Saturday was the start of a historic era, with it being Pep Guardiola's first ever game in charge of the financial juggernauts of Man City. It had the feel of a comfortable win for Man City as they went 1-0 up thanks to an early Aguero penalty. It wasn't just a footnote in the history books though, as Sunderland retaliated, the ever-clinical Jermaine Defoe scoring the first of 15 that season, an impressive tally for a team who finished at the foot of the table. Then, an incredible twist as Paddy McNair arrived at the back post for the underdogs and nodded home, with the small caveat of it being a header into the wrong net. Manchester City sealed the 2-1 victory thanks to that late-on goal. Bournemouth, attempting to establish themselves in their second season in the Premier League under Eddie Howe, lost to Manchester United by 3-1 in the first game on Sunday. It was the only game of the weekend to be decided by more than one goal. You would have been hard-pressed at the time to have predicted Bournemouth establishing themselves as well as they have since then. You'd be even more shocked by the fact that this is arguably one of Man United's best seasons in the last 10 years, despite them finishing 6th in the table. Their slightly disappointing league finish offset by them winning the Europa League and the League Cup under Jose Mourinho. As I grew up under the ever-present shadow of Alex Ferguson's dominance, over 10 years later, I still have to fight the urge of dreading a trip to Old Trafford and seeing it as an automatically dropped 3 points on the fixture list. The penultimate fixture saw an absolute banger of a game and a beautiful symmetry as Wenger, in his penultimate year as Arsenal manager, faced Klopp in his second year in charge of Liverpool. In my opinion, there's not been a manager in Premier League history who has been treated as harshly in terms of his legacy as Arsene Wenger. Say his name, and I bet the first thing that comes into the minds of a lot of fans is the era of Wengerite and his repeated top 4 finishes. Look at this team that he had to try out on the first week of the Premier League in 2016-17. A geriatric Petr Cech, protected by a back 4 of Bellerin, Holding, Chambers and Monreal, with his holding midfielders being El Nene and Coquelin. There were some solid players there, but it's far from conjuring images of a title-challenging team. Wenger had to spend years penny pinching as Arsenal invested in their new stadium, while going up against two teams with essentially unlimited funds in Chelsea and Man City, and sharing most of his time with one of the most dominant managers ever in Alex Ferguson. Getting this squad to 5th is an impressive achievement, and I think it's often forgotten in modern discourse just how much of Arsenal's current Premier League contention is down to his ability to guide the club through that stadium building process. And remember, they still haven't actually gone all the way, which Wenger was able to do. As soon as he left, they were then in a position where they could casually drop £72 million on horrendous signings like Nicolas Pepe and not have it cripple them financially. Liverpool were still dealing with some of the remains of their own less than stellar recruitment, with players like Klavan, Lovren and Moreno still featuring at the back, but the team was starting to take shape up front, with a front 3 featuring Coutinho, Firmino and Mane. Theo Walcott spurned the first major chance of the game as he failed to convert a penalty that he won from a clumsy tackle by Moreno, Mignolet diving to his right and pushing it away, but he made up for it only a minute later as he drilled a low effort into the bottom corner, once again from 12 yards out, but from a much narrower angle. Liverpool then went on a tear, as they would do many more times under Klopp, starting with the goal of the weekend, an incredible free kick from Philippe Coutinho, who I think I need to go back and watch some highlights of from his Liverpool days, as my memory is a bit tainted from the back half of his career. This was one of the best free kicks you'll ever see, achieving an incredible level of curl considering the pace of the strike. One of those free kicks that you have absolutely no qualms about calling unstoppable. Lallana then coolly finished off a lovely team goal, Coutinho found a second, and Mane finished off an incredible run with a clinical finish as he cut inside. 4-1, and looking out of reach for Arsenal, future Liverpool player Oxlade-Chamberlain then scored his own version of that Mane goal, juking past two on the wing. Callum Chambers then headed home from a clipped free kick to pull Arsenal back within one goal with 15 minutes still left to play, but they were unable to manufacture that final goal to complete the comeback. Walcott's missed penalty looming large as the ref blew the whistle to bring an end to the game. Liverpool clinching the 4-3 victory in a barnstormer. Fittingly, rounding things out were the champions of the season, a Chelsea team managed by Antonio Conte in a London derby against Slavan Bilic and West Ham. Chelsea were yet to adopt their iconic 5 at the back setup that would take them to the title, instead opting for the more traditional 4-5-1. They took the lead through a Hazard penalty before James Collins, of all people, found the equaliser, connecting beautifully with his left peg on the half volley. It looked to be heading for a draw. Conte made one of the biggest downgrades in a double substitution of all time when chasing the game, with time winding down. Eden Hazard and Oscar for Michy Batshuayi and Victor Moses. Shockingly though, this was the key to finding the winner, as Batshuayi flicked on a header and Costa scraped a daisy cutter into the bottom corner to seal a crucial opening week win for the eventual title winners. I don't really have any grand takeaways from this little trip down memory lane for one of the best opening weeks in Premier League history, apart from being able to confirm that they do get a lot better in retrospect. You can reflect on the season as a whole and on the changes and the beginnings of brand new storylines and eras. I guess I feel a little bit old too, but that's just becoming more and more common these days. So I'm off to drink some prune juice and listen to the gramophone, eh?